What happens when a woman discovers her husband never wanted her, seconds before saying, "I do"? Alessia Romano stood frozen outside the chapel doors, her white dress suddenly feeling like a cage. Through the crack, she heard Luca Devereaux's voice, cold as winter steel. "I don't want her. She's just a pawn to secure the territory." Her father's deal. A syndicate merger wrapped in lace and lies. Stay with me until the very end to see how this forced marriage becomes the deadliest alliance Chicago has ever seen. Drop a like and comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. The cathedral smelled like lilies and gunpowder. Nobody else seemed to notice. The 500 guests seated in polished pews probably thought the floral arrangements were just overpowering, but Alessia knew better. She'd grown up in this world where men carried Glocks under Armani suits, and every celebration doubled as a territorial negotiation. The Romano family didn't do anything small, and her wedding was no exception. Alessia stood in the bride's preparation room, staring at herself in the full-length mirror. The dress was objectively stunning. Italian silk, hand-beaded lace, a train that cost more than most people's cars. Her mother had cried when she'd first tried it on 3 months ago. Alessia hadn't. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Her mother, Carmela, adjusted the veil for the 100th time, her hands shaking slightly. She'd been drinking since noon. "Thanks, Ma. Luca is a good man, strong. He'll take care of you." Alessia didn't respond. What was there to say? That she'd met her future husband exactly 4 times before today? That the longest conversation they'd ever had lasted maybe 7 minutes? That she knew absolutely nothing about him except his reputation, which was terrifying enough to make grown men reconsider their life choices. Luca Devereaux, 29 years old, controlled half of Chicago's South Side and a good chunk of the shipping routes coming through the Great Lakes. His father had built the empire. Luca had fortified it with ruthless efficiency. People said he was calculating, emotionless, brutal when necessary. Nobody used words like warm or kind. Perfect husband material, obviously. "I need some air," Alessia said, pulling away from her mother's fussing. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. I'll be back." She walked out before Carmela could protest, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The cathedral was massive, all Gothic architecture and stained glass, the kind of place that made you feel small and judged. She headed toward the side corridor, away from the main chapel where guests were still filing in. That's when she heard the voices. Alessia slowed, recognizing her father's gravelly tone coming from a room just ahead. The door was cracked open maybe 2 inches. She should have kept walking, should have minded her business. She didn't. "You're getting everything you asked for." That was her father, Dominic Romano, the man who'd built his fortune on construction contracts and broken kneecaps. "My territory north of the river, full cooperation on the shipping routes, and my daughter. So why do you look like someone died?" "I'm fine." Luca's voice was different than she'd expected. Colder, flatter. Like he was discussing a business transaction, not his wedding day. "The arrangement works for both families." "That's not an answer." A pause. Alessia pressed closer to the door, her heartbeat suddenly very loud in her ears. "I don't want her, Dominic. Let's not pretend this is anything other than what it is. A strategic merger. She's a means to an end. Nothing more." The words hit like a physical blow. Alessia's hand went to the wall, steadying herself. The expensive lace of her dress suddenly felt suffocating. "Jesus, Luca, she's 22 years old, my daughter. Show some respect." "I'm being honest. You wanted this union to secure territory. I'm giving you that. But don't ask me to pretend I'm some lovesick fool excited about marrying a girl I barely know. She's a pawn in this game, same as everything else. That's the reality." Alessia stopped listening. She turned and walked back down the corridor, her vision slightly blurred. Not from tears. She wasn't going to give him that. From pure concentrated rage. A pawn. A means to an end. She'd known this marriage wasn't a love match. Arranged marriages were common enough in their world, practical alliances that benefited both families. She'd made peace with that. But hearing him say it out loud, with such complete indifference, like she was a piece of property being transferred. Alessia found herself back in the preparation room. Her mother looked up, startled. "That was quick. I need a minute alone. But please, Ma." Something in her face made Carmela nod and slip out quietly, closing the door behind her. Alessia stood there, breathing hard, trying to organize her thoughts into something coherent. She could refuse. Walk out right now. Her father would be furious, but what could he actually do? Drag her down the aisle? Except she knew exactly what would happen. Dominic Romano didn't tolerate disobedience, especially not public humiliation. If she walked out, there would be consequences. Not just for her, but for her younger sister Sophia, who was still in high school, for her mother, who depended entirely on Dominic's goodwill. And beyond her family, there were larger implications. The Romano-Devereux alliance had been months in the making. Other families had restructured their operations based on this merger. Backing out now would create a power vacuum, possibly trigger a war. So her choices were marry a man who'd just called her a pawn, or potentially start a bloodbath. Great options. Alessia looked at herself in the mirror again. The beautiful dress, the perfect makeup, the elaborate hairstyle. She looked like a princess. She felt like livestock. A knock on the door. "It's time, sweetheart," her father's voice, gruff but trying for gentle. Alessia closed her eyes, took a breath, opened them again. Coming. The ceremony was exactly as elaborate as expected. Alessia walked down the aisle on her father's arm, past 500 people she mostly didn't know, toward a man who considered her a strategic asset. The organ music swelled dramatically. People smiled. Some of the older women dabbed at their eyes. None of them knew the truth. Luca stood at the altar in a black tuxedo, looking like every dark romantic fantasy ever written. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and ice-blue eyes that gave away absolutely nothing. His dark hair was styled perfectly. His expression was neutral, polite, appropriate for the occasion. He looked at her like she was a stranger, because she was. Dominic placed her hand in Luca's and stepped back. His palm was warm, his grip firm but impersonal. They stood facing each other while the priest began the traditional ceremony. Alessia barely heard the words. She was too busy trying to figure out what she was supposed to do with the rage still burning in her chest. She couldn't make a scene. That would only prove Luca right, make her look emotional and unstable. Couldn't refuse when asked to speak her vows. Same problem. So she stood there wearing a serene expression while internally planning 100 different ways this could go wrong. "Do you, Alessia Marie Romano, take Luca Vincent Devereux to be your lawfully wedded husband?" She met Luca's eyes. He looked back, waiting. Still nothing in his expression, just polite attention, a pawn, a means to an end. "I do." The words came out steady, calm. She watched something flicker in Luca's gaze. Surprise, maybe, that she'd gone through with it, as if he'd expected her to bolt. "And do you, Luca Vincent Devereux, take Alessia Marie Romano to be your lawfully wedded wife?" He didn't hesitate. "I do." 2 words that meant nothing to him and everything to her future. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Luca leaned in. Alessia tilted her face up. Their lips met in a brief, chaste kiss that was performed perfectly for the audience and felt like absolutely nothing. The congregation applauded. They were married. The reception was held at the Drake Hotel, because of course it was. The Romano family didn't do anything halfway. The ballroom was decorated like something out of a magazine, all white roses and crystal and dramatic lighting. A 12-piece orchestra played while guests drank champagne that cost more per bottle than most monthly mortgages. Alessia sat at the head table, Luca beside her, and played her role perfectly. She smiled, made small talk with relatives, cut the cake while photographers captured every angle, did the first dance while everyone watched and made approving noises. Luca was an excellent dancer, smooth, confident, leading her through the waltz like he'd done it 1,000 times. Probably had. "You're very good at this," she said quietly, the first words she'd spoken directly to him since the ceremony. "At what?" "Pretending." His hand tightened fractionally at her waist. "I'm not pretending anything." "Right. This is all very real and meaningful to you." "It's a wedding reception. I'm behaving appropriately." "Like you're at a business conference." "This is business, Alessia. We both know that." She looked up at him. His expression was still carefully neutral, but something in his jaw had tightened. Good. At least she could annoy him. "Must be exhausting," she said. Being this controlled all the time. It's called professionalism. It's called being a robot. The song ended. They separated and Luca's face returned to its default, polite mask. He led her back to the table, pulled out her chair, then immediately got pulled into conversation with one of his associates. Alessia watched him work the room for the next 2 hours. He was good at it, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, making people feel important. The perfect host. The respected leader. The man who'd called her a pawn. Around midnight, after the cake and the toasts and the endless photographs, Luca appeared at her side. We should go. Go where? Home. Right, home. Except she didn't have a home anymore. Her apartment in her father's building, the place she'd lived for the past 4 years, wasn't hers anymore. Everything had been packed up yesterday and moved to... Where exactly is home? She asked. Lakeshore Drive, penthouse. Of course it was. They said their goodbyes, more hugs, more well wishes, more people telling them how beautiful they looked together. Alessia's face hurt from smiling. Finally, they made it to the car, a black Mercedes with a driver who didn't make eye contact. The drive took 20 minutes. They sat in silence, Luca checking his phone while Alessia stared out the window at Chicago's nighttime skyline. The city looked beautiful from inside an expensive car. Everything did. The building was exactly what she'd expected. Modern, luxurious, with a doorman who greeted Luca by name and pretended Alessia had been living there for years. They took a private elevator to the top floor. Luca unlocked the door and held it open. After you. Alessia stepped inside and stopped. The penthouse was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Modern furniture. Art that was probably worth more than her college education. Everything was pristine, minimalist, expensive. It looked like a hotel. Your things are in the East Wing, Luca said, shrugging off his jacket. Second door on the right. I had my assistant set up the closet and bathroom. Where's your room? West Wing. Opposite sides of the penthouse, of course. We have separate rooms? You expected something different. Yes, actually. She didn't know what she'd expected, but separate wings seemed excessive even for an arranged marriage. Luca loosened his tie, watching her with that same unreadable expression. I thought you'd prefer privacy. Privacy? Right. Unless you'd rather... no. The word came out sharper than she'd intended. Separate is fine. Good. He walked toward what she assumed was his wing, then paused. There are staff that come during the day, housekeeper, chef, security. They'll stay out of your way. If you need anything, there's an intercom system. Great. Tomorrow I have meetings most of the day. Feel free to explore the city, get familiar with the area. Just let Marcus know if you're going out. Who's Marcus? Head of security. He'll be assigned to you. I need a bodyguard? You're a Devereaux now. Yes, you need a bodyguard. The way he said it, casual, matter-of-fact, like this was completely normal, made something twist in her chest. Anything else I should know? She asked. Luca considered. The espresso machine is complicated. There's a manual in the kitchen. Don't try to figure it out yourself or you'll break it. Then he walked away, disappearing into his wing without another word. Alessia stood alone in the massive living room, still wearing her wedding dress, and felt something very close to hysteria bubble up in her throat. This was her life now. This sterile, beautiful cage with a husband who treated her like an inconvenient roommate. She found her room, her wing, apparently, and discovered that Luca's assistant had indeed unpacked everything. Her clothes hung in a walk-in closet bigger than her old bedroom. Her toiletries were arranged in a bathroom with heated marble floors and a shower that could fit 6 people. Everything was perfect and cold, and not hers. Alessia stripped off the wedding dress, left it in a heap on the floor, and took the longest, hottest shower of her life. When she finally got out, she found comfortable clothes, yoga pants, and an old Northwestern sweatshirt, and crawled into the massive bed. Sleep didn't come easy. She lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had changed in one day. This morning, she'd been Alessia Romano, living in her father's building, working at a nonprofit she actually cared about, having brunch with friends on Sundays. Tonight, she was Alessia Devereaux, wife to a man who didn't want her, living in a penthouse that felt like a museum, with no idea what she was supposed to do with herself. A pawn in someone else's game. She must have eventually fallen asleep because she woke up to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to cover. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. Then it all came rushing back: the wedding, the reception, the sterile penthouse, Luca's complete indifference. Right. Alessia got up, pulled on the same comfortable clothes from last night, and ventured out of her wing. The penthouse was quiet. She found the kitchen, all stainless steel and marble, and discovered the complicated espresso machine Luca had warned her about. She made coffee anyway, burnt the first attempt, got the second one drinkable. A woman appeared while she was drinking it, middle-aged and efficient-looking. "Mrs. Devereaux, good morning. I'm Helen, the housekeeper. Mr. Devereaux asked me to let you know he left around 6 for meetings downtown. He'll be back this evening." Mrs. Devereaux. The name still felt wrong. "Okay, thank you. Is there anything you need? Breakfast? I can prepare." "I'm fine, really." Helen nodded and disappeared, leaving Alicia alone again. She wandered through the penthouse, coffee in hand, taking in the details she'd been too exhausted to notice last night. It really was beautiful. The art alone probably cost millions. Everything was carefully curated, perfectly placed. But there was nothing personal. No photographs, no books left lying around, no random clutter. It was like a showroom. She found Luca's wing, not because she was snooping, just curious, and discovered it was just as impersonal as the rest of the place. His bedroom was twice the size of hers, with the same floor-to-ceiling windows, the same expensive furniture. The only thing that suggested anyone actually lived there was a book on the nightstand. She picked it up. Some thriller novel, bookmark halfway through. So he read fiction. Interesting. Alessia put it back and returned to her own wing, feeling more unsettled than before. What was she supposed to do? She couldn't go back to her nonprofit job. Her father had made it clear that wasn't appropriate for a Devereaux wife. Couldn't just wander around Chicago alone, apparently, since she now required a bodyguard. So what? Sit in this beautiful prison and wait for her husband to decide she was worth his time? No, absolutely not. Over the next 3 weeks, a routine established itself. Luca left early, came back late. They saw each other at dinner sometimes, when their schedules aligned, and made stilted conversation about nothing important. The weather, news headlines, whether the housekeeper should change the flowers in the entryway. Never anything real, never anything that mattered. Alicia tried to build a life. She met with her sister for lunch a few times, carefully avoiding Sophia's questions about married life. She explored the neighborhood, with Marcus trailing 10 feet behind like a well-dressed shadow. She looked into volunteer opportunities, but found most organizations uncomfortable with her new last name. Turned out being married to a syndicate boss limited your options. The only person who seemed genuinely happy about the marriage was her mother, who called every few days to ask if Alicia was pregnant yet. "Ma, we've been married 3 weeks. So, your cousin Gabriella was pregnant a month after her wedding. Good for Gabriella. You're not getting any younger, sweetheart." Alessia was 22. "I'll keep that in mind." She started noticing things about Luca. Small things. He drank his coffee black, no sugar. Worked out every morning at 5. She heard him sometimes, weights clanging in the home gym. Took calls in Italian and Russian, switching languages effortlessly. Never raised his voice, even when he was clearly angry about something. And he watched her. Not obviously. Not in any way she could call him out on, but she'd catch him sometimes, his gaze tracking her across the room before he'd look away, like he was checking, making sure she was okay, or maybe just keeping tabs on his investment. Hard to tell. One night, about a month into their marriage, Alessia woke up around 2 in the morning needing water. She padded out to the kitchen in her pajamas, not bothering with lights since the city glow through the windows illuminated everything just fine. Luca was there. She stopped in the doorway, startled. He sat at the kitchen island in sweatpants and a t-shirt, the most casual she'd ever seen him, with what looked like a glass of whiskey. "Sorry," she said. "Didn't know you were up. Can't sleep?" Thirsty. She got a glass, filled it from the water dispenser, very aware of him watching her. The silence stretched. "You do this often?" she asked, nodding at the whiskey. "Middle of the night drinking?" "Sometimes." "Business problems?" "Something like that." She should go back to bed. Let him have his space. Instead, she found herself pulling out the stool across from him. "Want to talk about it?" Luca's eyebrows rose fractionally. Why would I do that? Because we're married, and that's what married people do? We're not exactly a conventional marriage, Alicia. No kidding. He took a drink, studying her. You're up at 2 in the morning. Your turn. What's keeping you awake? Honestly, I'm bored. Bored. Yes, bored. I have nothing to do. No job, no purpose, no idea what I'm supposed to do with myself except sit around looking decorative. You could take classes, pick up a hobby. Most women would. I'm not most women, and I don't want hobbies. I want something that matters. Luca set down his glass. What did you do before? I worked at a literacy nonprofit, taught adult reading classes, helped people study for their GED. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. Why did you stop? Your world and nonprofits don't exactly mix. My father made it clear that continuing wasn't appropriate. Something shifted in Luca's expression. Not quite guilt, but something adjacent. What would you want to do? If you could do anything? The question surprised her. I don't know, something useful. Something that isn't just killing time until I die. Dramatic? I'm 22 years old and my entire life is already mapped out. Wife, then mother, then what? I just exist in your shadow forever? That's not... He stopped, started again. I never asked you to exist in my shadow. You never asked me anything, Luca. That's the problem. They looked at each other across the kitchen island. The city lights cast strange shadows across his face, making him look less controlled, more human. What do you want from me? He asked finally. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe just acknowledgement that I exist. That I'm a person, not a business asset. I know you're a person. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm just part of the furniture. Beautiful, expensive, completely irrelevant. Luca's jaw tightened. If you were irrelevant, you wouldn't have a full security detail. You wouldn't have Marcus following you everywhere. You wouldn't have you controlling every aspect of my life? Protecting every aspect of your life. There's a difference. Is there? He stood abruptly, grabbed his glass. It's late. We should both get some sleep. And just like that, the conversation was over. He walked away, back to his wing, leaving Alicia alone in the kitchen, wondering what the hell had just happened. Things shifted after that night. Subtle changes. Luca started asking her opinion on small things, what restaurant to order from, whether they should replace the living room furniture. Nothing major, but more than before. He also started coming home earlier. Not every night, but a few times a week he'd be there for dinner. They'd eat together, talk about their days in careful, surface-level ways. It wasn't much, but it was something. Alessia also noticed the security getting tighter, more men in dark suits appearing in the building lobby. Marcus's shifts getting longer. She asked him about it once. Just precautions, Mrs. Devereaux. Precautions against what? Nothing you need to worry about? Which meant something she definitely needed to worry about. She tried asking Luca. He gave her the same non-answer. Just business. Nothing that concerns you. Except it clearly did concern her if she had bodyguards multiplying like rabbits. 2 months into their marriage, Alessia's sister came over for lunch. Sophia was 17, still in her senior year, and refreshingly normal compared to the rest of their family. She bounced into the penthouse full of energy and questions. This place is insane. How many rooms does it have? I stopped counting at 12. And you have the whole thing to yourself during the day? Pretty much. Luca's always working. Sophia flopped onto the couch, studying her sister. Are you happy? Alessia considered lying, decided against it. I'm adjusting. That's not an answer. It's complicated. He treats you okay? He barely treats me at all. We're like roommates who share a last name. That sucks. Yeah. Sophia grabbed her hand. You know you could leave, right? Come stay with me. We could figure something out. It was sweet, naive, also completely impossible. I can't just leave, Soph. It doesn't work that way. Why not? Because our families are connected now. Because there are business arrangements that depend on this marriage. Because... She stopped. It's complicated. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. They had lunch on the balcony, talking about safer subjects. Sophia's college applications, her boyfriend drama, whether she should cut her hair. Normal sister stuff. It felt good, grounding, like Alessia still had one connection to her old life. Marcus drove Sophia home around 3. Alessia was cleaning up the lunch dishes when Luca walked in, which was strange because he never came home in the middle of the afternoon. He looked stressed, more than usual. His tie was loosened, hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "Fine. I need to talk to you." Her stomach dropped. "About what?" "Security. There's been a situation." "Well, what kind of situation?" He moved to the windows, hands in his pockets, looking out at the lake. "One of the families we do business with is having internal problems. Power struggle. It's creating instability. And that affects me how? They might try to use you as leverage. Against me." The words took a second to process. "You think someone might try to kidnap me?" "I think someone might try several things. Kidnapping is one possibility." He said it so calmly, like discussing the weather. "Jesus, Luca. It's being handled, but I need you to be more careful. No going out without Marcus, no unplanned trips. I need to know where you are at all times." "So I'm what? Under house arrest?" "You're under protection." "Same thing." He turned to face her. "This isn't a game, Alessia. These people don't play by rules. If they think taking you will give them leverage over me, they'll do it, and they won't be gentle about it." Something in his voice made her pause. There was an edge there she hadn't heard before, almost like fear. "How serious is this threat?" "Serious enough that I'm here instead of at the office." Which was saying something. Luca lived at that office. "What do you want me to do?" "Stay here. Stay safe. Let my men do their job." "For how long?" "Until it's resolved." "And when will that be?" "I don't know." "Great. Fantastic." She was officially a prisoner in her own home. Alessia sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. "This is my life now, constantly looking over my shoulder, never knowing if someone's going to... I won't let anything happen to you." The certainty in his voice made her look up. Luca stood there, hands still in his pockets, jaw set in that stubborn line she was starting to recognize. "Why?" she asked. "Why what?" "Why do you care? I'm just a pawn, remember? A means to an end." His expression flickered. Something like pain crossed his face before the mask slammed back down. "Alessia, you said that. To my father. On our wedding day. That I was just a strategic asset. Nothing more." Silence. Luca's face had gone carefully blank. "You heard that conversation?" "Every word." More silence. He looked like he was mentally calculating something, running through scenarios. "I should have..." He stopped, started over. "That was honest?" "Yeah, I got that impression. It was more complicated than what? Than reducing me to a chess piece in your territorial games? How is that complicated?" "Because I was lying." The words hung in the air between them. Alessia stared at him. "What?" Luca ran a hand through his hair, destroying what was left of its style. "I was lying. To your father. To myself. I don't know. But it wasn't true. You didn't want this marriage?" "I didn't want this marriage. There's a difference." "Well, that literally makes no sense." "I know." He crossed to the couch, sat down, but kept distance between them. Up close, she could see tension in every line of his body. "My father died when I was 23, he said quietly. "Left me this empire and absolutely no preparation for how to run it. I spent the next 6 years building walls, eliminating weaknesses, making sure nothing and no one could touch me. It worked. I built something secure, something I could control." Alessia stayed quiet, sensing there was more. "Then your father proposed this alliance, and you walked into that first meeting, and I..." He stopped, shook his head. "I knew immediately you were a problem. A problem. A distraction, a vulnerability, something that could get under my walls if I let it. So I decided I wouldn't let it. I'd keep everything professional, distant, under control." "That's working out great for you." A ghost of a smile. "I noticed." They sat there, not quite looking at each other. Outside, the city hummed with afternoon traffic. So what now? Alessia asked finally. Now I keep you safe. And I stop pretending you're not. He cut himself off. Not what? Important. The word settled over her like weight. Important. Not a pawn. Not a means to an end. Important. Luca, you should get some rest, he said, standing abruptly. Back to business. I have calls to make. Marcus will be stationed outside if you need anything. And he was gone again, leaving her alone with too many thoughts and not enough answers. The security doubled overnight. Alessia woke up the next morning to find 2 additional men stationed in the hallway outside her wing. When she went to the kitchen, there were more in the living room, speaking quietly into earpieces. The penthouse felt less like a home and more like a military installation. Marcus appeared while she was attempting to make breakfast. Mrs. Devereaux, Mr. Devereaux wanted me to brief you on the new protocols. Protocols, great, my favorite thing. If Marcus noticed her sarcasm, he didn't show it. He had that perfect security guy demeanor. Professional, unflappable, probably trained to ignore emotional civilians. You're not to leave the building without advance notice. Minimum 2-hour heads up for any outings. Your vehicle will be changed daily, routes varied. Your phone has been upgraded with tracking software. He handed her a new phone. Same model as her old one, but the case was different. You put a tracker in my phone? For your safety, ma'am. Right, safety. Mr. Devereaux also wanted you to have this. Marcus produced a small box from his jacket pocket. Inside was a bracelet. Delicate, expensive looking, with what appeared to be diamonds set in platinum. Also completely not her style. It's beautiful, but I don't really wear... It has a panic button. Press the clasp 3 times rapidly, and it sends an alert to all security personnel with your exact location. Oh, not jewelry. Another tracking device disguised as jewelry. Does Luca think I'm going to get kidnapped in my own bedroom? Mr. Devereaux thinks it's better to be prepared. Alessia took the bracelet, turning it over in her hands. Up close, she could see the small mechanisms hidden in the design. Whoever made it had done quality work. You'd never know it was anything other than an expensive accessory. She put it on. It felt heavy. Anything else? Yes, Mr. Devereaux won't be home for dinner tonight. He said to tell you not to wait up. Of course he wouldn't be home. They'd had one semi-honest conversation, and now he was avoiding her again. Typical. The day dragged. Alessia tried reading but couldn't focus. Tried watching TV, but everything felt trivial. She ended up in the home gym around noon, taking out her frustration on the treadmill until her legs burned and her lungs ached. When she finally stopped, drenched in sweat, one of the security guys was standing in the doorway. Mrs. Devereaux? You have a visitor. Who? Your mother. Fantastic. Alessia showered quickly and found Carmela in the living room, perched on the edge of the couch like she was afraid to wrinkle it. She looked older than Alessia remembered, more fragile somehow. Ma, this is a surprise. I tried calling. You didn't answer. Sorry, I was working out. Carmela's eyes scanned her daughter, taking in details with that maternal intensity that missed nothing. You look thin. Are you eating? I'm fine. You're not fine. You're stressed. I can see it. Alessia sat down across from her mother, suddenly exhausted. What are you doing here, Ma? I heard about the security situation. Your father told me. Did he tell you it's because someone might try to kidnap me to get leverage over Luca? Carmela flinched. He said there were precautions being taken. That's one way to put it. They sat in uncomfortable silence. Outside the windows, Lake Michigan stretched out gray and endless under cloudy skies. It looked cold. Your father wants you to come stay with us, Carmela said finally, until things settle down. He thinks you'd be safer. Luca has an army guarding me. I'm pretty safe. But you're alone here, no family around. If something happened, nothing's going to happen. You don't know that. Alessia looked at her mother, really looked. Carmela's hands were shaking slightly. Her makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes. You're scared, Alessia said. Of course I'm scared. You're my daughter. I'm also an adult, and I'm married. This is my life now. This shouldn't be your life. You should be happy starting a family, not hiding in a fortress with armed guards everywhere. Yeah, well, we don't always get what we should have. The bitterness in her own voice surprised Alessia. Carmela reached across the coffee table, grabbed her hand. Baby, it's not too late. You could still… Still what? Leave? Break the alliance between our families? Start a war? Your father would find a way. No, he wouldn't, and we both know it. Carmela's face crumpled. For a horrible moment, Alessia thought her mother might cry. But Carmela Romano had spent 30 years married to Dominic. She knew how to pull herself together. Does he treat you well? She asked quietly. Luca? Alessia thought about how to answer that. The truth was complicated. Luca didn't mistreat her. He wasn't cruel or abusive. He was just absent. Like she was a responsibility he'd rather not deal with. Except for last night. Last night he'd looked at her like she mattered. He's fine, she said. We're fine. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Carmela stayed another hour, making nervous small talk about family gossip and Sophia's college applications. Then she left, hugging Alessia too tight at the door. Be careful, sweetheart. I will. And call me, please, even just to talk. Okay, Ma. After she left, Alessia stood in the empty penthouse feeling more alone than ever. She thought about calling Sophia, but her sister was in school. Thought about calling one of her old friends, but what would she say? Hey, how's it going? I'm basically under house arrest because my husband's enemies might try to kill me? Instead, she pulled up Luca's contact on her new tracked phone and typed out a message. Your mother visited. She's worried. Thought you should know. She almost deleted it. What was the point? He probably wouldn't even respond. But she sent it anyway. 3 hours later, her phone buzzed. Did you tell her you were safe? Yes. Good. I'll be home around midnight. That was it. No explanation for where he was or what he was doing. Just a status update. Alessia threw the phone on the couch and went to find something for dinner. Luca came home at 12:15 looking exhausted. Alessia was still awake, curled up on the living room couch with a book she wasn't really reading. She heard the front door, the quiet conversation with the security team, his footsteps approaching. You're up, he said. Couldn't sleep. He'd taken off his jacket and tie, rolled up his shirt sleeves. There was something on his shirt that looked like blood, but he didn't seem injured. Is that yours? She asked, pointing. Luca looked down, noticed the stain. No, it's handled. Handled. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to, Alessia. Fair point. She didn't actually want to know whose blood was on his shirt or how it got there. He disappeared into his wing, presumably to shower and change. Came back 20 minutes later in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair damp. Went straight to the kitchen and poured himself whiskey. Alessia watched him from the couch. He looked different without the suits and the careful styling. Younger, more human. Long day? She asked. You could say that. The situation you mentioned, is it getting worse? Luca took a long drink before answering. It's progressing. That's not an answer. It's the one you're getting. She should let it go. Should go to bed and let him have his secrets. But something about the tension in his shoulders, the way he gripped that glass, made her push. Talk to me. About what? Whatever's eating at you. I'm fine. You're drinking whiskey at midnight with blood on your shirt. You're not fine. He turned to face her, leaning against the kitchen counter. The city lights behind him created strange shadows across his face. Why do you care? Because we're married, and I'm tired of pretending we're not. We're married on paper, Alessia. That's all. Is it? Something shifted in his expression. What do you want from me? The truth would be nice. The truth. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The truth is, I have 3 families trying to undermine my authority, 2 shipments that went missing this week, and a dozen problems I can't solve by throwing money at them. The truth is, you're in danger because of me, and I don't know how to fix it without starting a war that could get a lot of people killed. Is that what you wanted to hear? The raw honesty of it surprised her. Yes, she said quietly. Actually, it is. Luca stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Most people don't want to hear about this stuff. I'm not most people, and I'm already in it, whether you tell me or not. So I'd rather know what I'm dealing with. He took another drink, considering. The family I mentioned yesterday, Volkov's organization, they're fracturing. The old man died 6 months ago, and his sons are fighting over control. Mikhail, the oldest, wants to honor existing agreements. Victor, the younger one, thinks he can renegotiate terms by force. What kind of terms? Territory, profit splits, shipping routes, the usual. And he thinks kidnapping me would give him leverage? He thinks it would make me desperate enough to concede ground. He's wrong, but he's too stupid to realize it. The casual way Luca said it, like discussing a business competitor, not someone who might actually try to hurt her, should have been unsettling. Instead, Alessia felt oddly reassured. At least he was being honest. What are you going to do? Handle it. How? You really want the details? Yes. Luca studied her for a long moment, like he was trying to figure out if she was serious. Whatever he saw in her face must have convinced him. Victor's been making moves, but he's sloppy, doesn't have his father's patience or his brother's intelligence. He'll overreach. When he does, I'll be ready. And if he comes after me first? He won't get close enough to try. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. It was, but it also raised questions. Why are you so sure? Because I've spent the last 3 days fortifying every possible vulnerability. You have a 12-man security detail. Your phone, your bracelet, even your car, all tracked. I've got eyes on every building within a mile of here. If Victor or any of his people get within 100 yards, I'll know. He said it matter-of-factly. But Alessia heard what he wasn't saying. He'd been obsessing over her safety, planning for every scenario, losing sleep over keeping her alive. That seems excessive for someone who's just a strategic asset, she said softly. Luca's jaw tightened. I told you, I was lying about that. Were you? Yes. Then what am I? The question hung between them. Luca set down his glass, crossed the space between the kitchen and the living room, stood in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to see his face. I don't know, he said finally. Something I wasn't prepared for. Something that scares the hell out of me. Why? Because caring about someone makes you weak, gives your enemies a target. Everything I've built is based on not having weaknesses. And I'm a weakness. The biggest one I've got. He said it like a confession, like an admission of guilt. Alessia stood up, bringing them even closer. They were maybe 6 inches apart now. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his jaw, could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. Maybe weakness isn't always bad, she said. In my world, it gets you killed. Or maybe it makes you human. Luca reached out, hesitated, then touched her face. Just his fingertips against her cheek, so gentle it barely registered, like he was afraid she might disappear. I can't afford to be human. Everyone's human, Luca. Even you. His thumb traced her jawline. Alessia's breath caught. This was the closest they'd been since their wedding kiss, that performative, meaningless moment in front of 500 people. This felt different, real. You should go to bed, he said, but he didn't move. So should you. I have work to finish. At midnight? Doesn't stop because I'm tired. But he still didn't move. His hand was still on her face, warm and steady. Alessia could feel her heartbeat accelerating, her skin tingling where he touched her. This was stupid. They were basically strangers. They'd barely had real conversations. Just because he'd admitted she mattered to him didn't mean anything had actually changed. Except it did. Something had shifted. She could feel it in the air between them, the way he was looking at her, the way her body was responding to his proximity. Luca. Her phone buzzed, loudly, breaking the moment. They both stepped back. Alessia grabbed the phone from the couch, grateful for the interruption and annoyed by it in equal measure. Text from Sophia. Can you talk? Having boy drama. Need advice. Alessia almost laughed. Boy drama. Her 17-year-old sister's biggest problem was boy drama, while Alessia was standing here with a syndicate boss who'd just admitted she was his weakness. I should take this, she said. Yeah, of course. Luca grabbed his whiskey and disappeared back into his wing without another word. Alessia stood there for a moment, trying to calm her racing heart, before calling her sister back. Soph? What's wrong? The next week passed in strange limbo. The security stayed tight. Alicia barely left the penthouse. Luca came home earlier than usual most nights, and they'd have dinner together. Actual conversations about more than just logistics. He told her about the businesses he ran, the legitimate ones, and the ones that were less legitimate. She told him about her work at the nonprofit, the students she'd taught, the small victories that had made it worthwhile. They were learning each other, slowly, carefully. But they didn't touch again. Didn't cross that line they'd almost crossed in the living room. It hung between them, unspoken, while they navigated this new version of their relationship. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, everything went wrong. Alessia was meeting Sofia for lunch at a restaurant downtown. Marcus had vetted the location, changed the reservation time twice, mapped 3 different routes. It should have been safe. They made it through appetizers fine. Sofia was in high spirits, talking about her acceptance to Northwestern. Alicia was genuinely happy for her, enjoying the normalcy of it. The attack came during the main course. Later, Alessia would only remember fragments. The black SUV that came out of nowhere. Marcus shouting, glass shattering, someone grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise, Sofia screaming. Then Marcus was there, shoving someone away, his gun out. More security materialized from somewhere. There was shouting in Russian. A gunshot, loud enough to make Alicia's ears ring. Marcus half carried, half dragged her to their car. She tried to look back for Sofia, but he wouldn't let her. "Your sister's secure. We need to move, now." The drive back to the penthouse was a blur of speed and adrenaline. Marcus drove like they were being chased. Maybe they were. Alicia couldn't tell. Her hands were shaking so badly, she had to sit on them. They made it back in under 10 minutes. The security team swarmed them the second they entered the building. Marcus hustled her into the elevator, up to the penthouse, checking every corner before letting her step out. "Stay here. Don't go near the windows. I'm calling Mr. Devereaux. My sister is safe. Your father's team has her. She's fine." Then he was on the phone, speaking in low, urgent tones. Alessia stood in the middle of the living room, still shaking, trying to process what had just happened. Someone had tried to grab her, actually tried to kidnap her in broad daylight. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This was real. The front door burst open 20 minutes later. Luca strode in, fury written across every line of his body. He went straight to Alessia, grabbed her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine. Marcus..." "I know what Marcus did. Are you sure you're not hurt?" "I'm sure." His hands moved to her face, tilting her head up so he could examine her, looking for injuries, she realized, making sure she was actually okay. "I'm fine," she repeated. They got close enough to touch you. That's too close." His voice was deadly quiet. Alessia had never heard him sound like that, absolutely controlled but with violence simmering just underneath. "Luca, they're dead. All of them. I want names, faces, every detail. Find their families, their friends, everyone they've ever talked to. I want them to understand what happens when someone touches what's mine." He wasn't talking to her. Marcus had appeared in the doorway, along with 2 other men Alicia didn't recognize. "Already in progress, boss. We've got 3 in custody. They're talking." "Good. I want locations by tonight. We move before morning." Marcus nodded and disappeared. Luca turned back to Alessia, his hand still on her face. "You're staying here. No more outings, no more restaurants. Not until this is finished. You can't just lock me up. Watch me." "Luca, be reasonable." "Reasonable?" His control cracked slightly, voice rising. "They tried to take you, right in front of Marcus, in the middle of a crowded restaurant. That's not a warning shot or a scare tactic. That's a declaration of war. And they made it my war the second they touched you." The raw emotion in his voice stopped her cold. This wasn't the controlled businessman or the careful strategist. This was someone operating on pure protective fury. "I'm okay," she said quietly. "I'm here. I'm safe." Because Marcus was good at his job. If he'd been half a second slower, Luca cut himself off, his jaw working. "I can't think about that." "Then don't." "How am I supposed to not think about it? You're..." He stopped again, seemed to be fighting with himself. "You matter to me. I've tried not to let that happen, but it did anyway. And now these bastards think they can use that against me." "So what are you going to do?" "End it. Permanently." The certainty in his voice should have scared her. Instead, Alessia felt something almost like relief. At least he was being honest. At least she knew where she stood. "Will you tell me when it's done?" she asked. "Yes." "Promise?" "I promise." He pulled her into his chest, wrapping his arms around her. It was the first time he'd hugged her, really hugged her, not just a performative gesture for show. Alessia let herself lean into it, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. "I won't let them touch you again," he said into her hair. "Whatever it takes." She believed him. Luca left an hour later, taking half the security team with him. Marcus stayed behind with orders to shoot first and ask questions never if anyone came near the penthouse. Alessia tried to act normal, made dinner, attempted to watch TV, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Around 10, her phone rang. Luca. "It's done." Just those 2 words. "What's done?" "Victor and his people. They won't be a problem anymore." Alessia sat down on the couch, processing. "You killed them?" "Yes." No hesitation, no justification, just acknowledgement. "All of them?" "Everyone involved in today's attack. Victor's still breathing, but he won't try anything again. His brother made that very clear." "Mikhail helped you?" "Mikhail wants stability. I gave him an opportunity to consolidate power. He took it." Business. It was all business. Except Alicia knew it wasn't. Not entirely. Luca had gone after Victor because of her, because someone had tried to hurt her. "When will you be home?" she asked. A pause. "You want me to come home?" "Yes." "I'm covered in—" He stopped. "I need to clean up first, couple hours." "Okay, I'll wait up." Another pause. "You don't have to." "I know." She heard something in his breath, relief maybe, or something like it. "I'll be there soon." He showed up just after midnight, showered and changed, but looking completely drained. Alessia was still on the couch where she'd been since his call. "Hey," she said. "Hey." He sat down next to her, not across from her, not maintaining careful distance, but right next to her, close enough that their legs touched. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I should be asking you that." "I asked first." Luca leaned his head back against the couch, closing his eyes. "I'm exhausted, and angry, and relieved you're safe, and a dozen other things I don't have words for." Alessia reached over, took his hand. His fingers immediately laced through hers, holding tight. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For keeping me safe. For actually caring whether I live or die." "That's a pretty low bar." "You'd be surprised." They sat like that for a while, hands linked, not talking. Outside the windows, Chicago glittered with a million lights. Inside, everything felt quiet and strange, and almost peaceful. "I meant what I said earlier," Luca said finally. "You matter to me. I don't know when that happened or how to undo it, but it's true." "Who says you have to undo it?" "Because people I care about become targets. You already figured that out the hard way." "I'm already a target, Luca. That's not going to change whether you care about me or not. It's worse if they know I care. Gives them more leverage." Alessia turned to face him. "Then we make sure they can't use that leverage. We get stronger. Together." "You don't know what you're signing up for." "I married you. I'm pretty sure I signed up for exactly this." "You were forced to marry me. That's different. Was I forced to sit here waiting for you? Was I forced to hold your hand? At some point, Luca, this stops being about what we were forced into and starts being about what we choose." He opened his eyes, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "And what do you choose?" The question felt monumental. Like her answer would determine everything that came next. "I choose this," she said. "Messy and complicated and probably a terrible idea. But I choose it anyway." Luca's free hand came up to cup her face, thumb stroking her cheekbone. "You might regret that." "Probably, but I'm doing it anyway." He kissed her then. Not like their wedding kiss, performative and empty. This was real. His mouth on hers, gentle at first, then deeper when she responded. Her hands went to his shoulders, his shirt, pulling him closer. His arm wrapped around her waist, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. "We're going to do this wrong," he said. "Probably. I'm going to make mistakes. Me too. I've never... He stopped, started over. I don't know how to be what you need. Then we'll figure it out together. He kissed her again, softer this time, then pulled back, studying her face like he was trying to memorize it. Stay with me tonight, he said. Not in separate wings. With me. It wasn't a demand. It was a question. An offer. Alessia nodded. They went to his room, bigger than hers but just as impersonal. He gave her one of his t-shirts to sleep in. They climbed into bed together, and it should have been awkward, but somehow it wasn't. He pulled her against his chest, his arm around her waist, and she felt safer than she had in months. This is new for me, he said quietly into the darkness, caring about someone this much. Me too. We'll probably mess it up. Definitely. She felt him smile against her hair. But we're doing it anyway. Yeah, we are. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, choosing each other, despite every logical reason not to. Waking up next to someone was different than Alicia expected. She'd imagined it would feel intimate, maybe a little awkward the first time. What she hadn't anticipated was how heavy Luca's arm would be across her waist, or how his breathing would change when he started to wake up, or the way her back fit perfectly against his chest, like they'd done this 100 times before. The morning light filtered through the windows, turning everything soft and gold. Alessia stayed very still, not wanting to break whatever this moment was. You awake? Luca's voice was rough with sleep, his breath warm against her neck. Yeah. What time is it? No idea. His arm tightened around her waist, pulling her closer. We should probably get up. Probably. Neither of them moved. This is going to complicate things, he said after a minute. Things are already complicated. Fair point. Alessia rolled over to face him. Up close, without the careful styling and expensive suits, Luca looked younger, more vulnerable. His hair was a mess, his jaw shadowed with stubble. She kind of liked him better this way. Do you regret it? She asked. Which part? Any of it. Luca reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. No. You? No. Even though He gestured vaguely at himself. All of this? Especially because of all of that. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe. Or disbelief that she actually meant it. I have meetings today, he said. But I'll be home for dinner. We should talk. About what this means. What we want it to mean. Okay? Okay? He kissed her forehead, then reluctantly disentangled himself and headed for the shower. Alessia lay there for a moment longer, staring at the ceiling, trying to process the fact that her fake marriage had just become significantly less fake. By the time she made it to the kitchen, Luca was already there, back in his armor. Tailored suit, styled hair, that carefully controlled expression. But when he saw her, something in his face softened. Coffee? He offered. Please. He made it for her. Black, no sugar, exactly how she liked it. When had he noticed that? Marcus will be with you all day, he said, handing her the cup. Victor's neutralized, but I don't want to take chances. I'm not planning to leave the penthouse anyway. Good. They stood there in the kitchen, drinking coffee, and it felt weirdly domestic, normal, like they were actually a couple instead of two people who'd been forced together and were now figuring out if they wanted to stay that way. I should go, Luca said, checking his watch. Call me if you need anything. I will. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something else, then seemed to decide against it and headed for the door. Alessia watched him go, feeling the absence immediately. This was dangerous. She was getting attached, actually catching feelings for a man who lived in a world of violence and moral ambiguity. Smart people would run in the opposite direction. She'd never been particularly smart about these things. The day passed slowly. Alessia tried to occupy herself, reading, working out, video calling with Sophia to make sure her sister was actually okay after yesterday's chaos. Sophia was fine, more excited about the drama of it all than traumatized. It was like something out of a movie, Sophia said, eyes bright. Marcus was so cool. Just boom, gun out, protecting you like a Secret Service agent. It wasn't cool, Soph. It was terrifying. But you're okay. And Luca totally went scorched earth on those guys, right? Dad said he handled it. Alessia wondered what exactly handled it meant in her father's vocabulary. Probably nothing she wanted spelled out. Yeah, he handled it. So are you two, actually together now? Or is it still the weird roommate situation? Leave it to her 17-year-old sister to cut through the bullshit. It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated. Just tell me if you're happy. Was she happy? That felt like too big a question, but she was something. Less alone, less trapped, less like her life was happening to her instead of with her. I'm getting there, Alessia said. Around 6, Luca texted that he was on his way home. Alessia found herself checking her reflection in the bathroom mirror, which was ridiculous. They'd slept in the same bed last night. She didn't need to impress him. She changed her shirt anyway. He walked in at 6:30, carrying takeout bags from the Italian place she'd mentioned liking once, weeks ago. He'd remembered. I figured we could eat in, he said, setting the bags on the counter. Unless you wanted to go out? In is good. They ate at the dining table, the first time they'd actually used it. The food was excellent. The conversation was careful, both of them dancing around the elephant in the room. Finally, after they'd cleared the plates, Luca poured them each a glass of wine and sat back down. So, we should talk. Yeah. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. The relationship thing. I've avoided it for years because it felt like a liability. And now? Now I'm apparently terrible at avoiding it. Alessia smiled despite herself. So what do you want? Luca took a drink, considering. Honestly, I want you. In whatever way you'll let me have you, but I also want you to understand what that means. My life, my world, it's not safe. What happened yesterday could happen again, will happen again, probably. People will always try to use you to get to me. I know. And you're okay with that? I'm not okay with it, but I'm choosing it anyway. Why? The question was genuine, not rhetorical. He actually wanted to know. Alessia set down her wine glass. Because for the first time since we got married, I feel like I actually matter to someone. Not as a pawn or a strategic asset or an obligation, just as myself. And maybe that's stupid. Maybe I should want more than that, but right now, it's enough. Luca looked at her like she'd said something profound instead of just honest. You matter, he said quietly. More than is probably smart for either of us. So we're doing this? Actually trying to make this work? Yeah, we are. No more separate wings? A small smile tugged at his mouth. No more separate wings. No more treating me like I'm made of glass? I can't promise that. You scare the hell out of me. Why? Because losing you would break something in me I didn't know I had to lose. The raw honesty of it stole her breath. This man who'd built his entire life around control and emotional distance was sitting here admitting she had the power to destroy him. You're not going to lose me, she said. You can't promise that. Neither can you. But we're choosing it anyway, remember? Luca reached across the table, took her hand. His thumb traced circles on her palm, a nervous gesture she'd never seen from him before. I need you to understand something, he said. The things I do, the business I run, it's not clean. It's not moral. People get hurt. Sometimes they die. I've made peace with that because it's the world I inherited, the world I know how to navigate. But if you're going to be part of my life, really part of it, you need to know what you're signing up for. You think I don't already know? I think you know in theory. Living with it daily is different. Alessia thought about the blood on his shirt last night, the casual way he'd admitted to killing Victor's people, the violence that simmered just underneath his controlled exterior. I grew up in this world, Luca. My father isn't exactly running a charity. I know what happens in the shadows. Knowing and accepting are different things. Then I accept it, all of it. The good, the bad, the morally ambiguous. He studied her face, looking for doubt. She met his gaze steadily, letting him see she meant it. Okay, he said finally, but if it ever gets to be too much, if you want out, you tell me. I'll figure something out. There is no out. We both know that. There's always an out if I make one. The certainty in his voice was both comforting and terrifying. How far would he go to protect her? What would he sacrifice? They moved to the couch after dinner, Alicia curled against his side while they half-watched some documentary neither of them cared about. It felt normal in a way nothing had felt normal since the wedding. like they were actually building something instead of just coexisting in the same space. "Can I ask you something?" Alessia said during a commercial break. "Sure." "Why did you agree to marry me? Originally, I mean, before everything got complicated." Luca was quiet for a moment, his fingers absently playing with her hair. "Your father offered an alliance I couldn't refuse without starting a war. The marriage was part of the package." "That's the business reason. What about the real one?" "That is the real one." "Luca." He sighed. "Fine. You want the truth? I saw your picture before we met. Your father sent it with the proposal. And I thought you were beautiful, but that wasn't the part that got me. It was something in your eyes. This look like you saw right through the bullshit. Like you knew exactly what world you lived in, and you weren't going to pretend otherwise." Alessia twisted to look up at him. "You got all that from a photo?" "I'm very observant, or very good at projecting." "Maybe both." She settled back against him. "For what it's worth, I thought you looked terrifying in your photos, like you could kill someone with just a look." "I can." "That's not as reassuring as you think it is." His chest rumbled with quiet laughter. "No, I guess not." They fell into comfortable silence. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy. Inside, everything felt still and almost peaceful. "I'm going to mess this up," Luca said eventually. "Probably multiple times. I'm not good at letting people in." "Then we'll unmess it, together." "That simple?" "Probably not, but we're going to try anyway." The next few weeks fell into a new rhythm. Luca still worked insane hours, but he came home for dinner most nights. They'd eat together, talk about their days. His filled with meetings and negotiations, and occasionally things Alessia suspected she was better off not knowing about. Hers increasingly focused on finding something meaningful to do with her time. They slept in the same bed every night. Sometimes they'd stay up talking until 2 in the morning. Sometimes they'd fall asleep the second their heads hit the pillows, exhausted from their respective days. Sometimes things got physical, tentative at first, then less so as they learned each other's bodies along with their personalities. It wasn't perfect. They fought sometimes. Luca's need for control clashed with Alessia's need for independence. Her impulsiveness frustrated his careful planning. His secretiveness drove her crazy when she knew he was dealing with something dangerous but wouldn't tell her details. But they were learning, figuring out how to be married to each other instead of just legally bound. One morning, about 6 weeks after everything changed, Alessia woke up to find Luca already awake, staring at the ceiling. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing. Just thinking." "About?" He turned to face her. "About how different this is from what I expected." "Good different or bad different?" "Terrifying different?" "That doesn't answer the question." "Both, maybe. I spent years building walls, and you just walk through them like they were made of paper." Alessia propped herself up on one elbow. "You could rebuild them. Tell me to go back to my own wing, go back to the way things were." "Could I?" "Could you?" Luca reached up, cupped her face. "No. Turns out I'm not that strong." "Or maybe you're stronger than you think. Maybe letting someone in isn't weakness." "In my world, it usually is." "Then maybe your world's definition of strength is wrong." He pulled her down, kissed her slowly. When they broke apart, he kept her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I love you," he said. "I didn't want to. Fought against it as long as I could. But I do." The words hung in the air between them. Alessia's heart was suddenly beating very fast. "You don't have to say it back," Luca continued. "I just needed you to know." "Luca, it's okay. I know this is all still new, and I'm not exactly easy to love, and—" "Shut up." She kissed him, putting everything she couldn't quite articulate into it. When she pulled back, she saw something vulnerable in his eyes. Fear that she'd reject him, fear that he'd said too much too soon. "I love you too," she said. "I'm pretty sure I have for a while now. I just wasn't ready to admit it." The relief that washed over his face was almost painful to see, like he'd genuinely believed she might not feel the same way. "Yeah? Yeah?" He kissed her again, and they didn't make it out of bed for another hour. But the peace couldn't last forever. Reality had a way of intruding even on the best moments. It came in the form of a phone call one afternoon while Alessia was having lunch with her mother. Luca's name flashed on her screen. She excused herself from the table. Hey, what's up? Where are you? His voice was tight, controlled in that way that meant something was very wrong. Having lunch with my mom. Why? Is Marcus with you? Yes. Luca, what's going on? A pause. She could hear voices in the background, urgent and overlapping. There's been a situation. I need you to go home. Now, Marcus will explain. What kind of situation? Alessia, please, just go home. I'll be there as soon as I can. The line went dead. Alessia returned to the table, trying to keep her expression neutral. I'm sorry, Ma. I need to go. Something came up. Carmela's face immediately creased with worry. Is everything okay? I'm sure it's fine. Just business stuff. Marcus appeared at her elbow like he'd been summoned telepathically. Probably had been, through whatever communication system the security team used. Mrs. Devereaux, we should leave. The drive back to the penthouse took 12 minutes. Marcus drove fast but controlled, his jaw set. Alessia tried asking what was happening. He gave her nothing. Mr. Devereaux will brief you when he arrives. Marcus, please, just tell me if someone's hurt. No one's hurt. That's all I can say. They made it to the penthouse. The security presence had tripled. Men in the lobby, men in the hallway, men stationed at every entrance point. Something big had happened. Alessia paced the living room for 20 minutes before Luca finally walked in. He looked like he'd aged a year in the past hour. His suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it. Tell me, she said. Luca crossed to the bar, poured himself a drink, downed it, poured another. There's a mole in my organization. The words hit like a physical blow. What? Someone's been feeding information to the Calabrese family. Details about shipments, meetings, security protocols, everything they'd need to undermine me. Alicia's mind raced. The Calabrese family was one of the oldest, most established organizations in Chicago. If they were making a move against Luca. How bad is it? Bad. They hit 3 of my warehouses today, took product worth about $2 million, killed 4 of my people. 4 people dead. Because someone inside Luca's organization had betrayed him. Do you know who? Not yet, but I will. The cold certainty in his voice made her shiver. What are you going to do? Luca set down his glass, turned to face her. Whatever it takes to protect what's mine, the business, my people. You. Luca, this is what I was talking about. This is the reality of my world. People die. Loyalties shift. Trust is a commodity that gets bought and sold, and sometimes the only way to survive is to be more ruthless than everyone else. Alessia crossed the space between them, took his hands. They were shaking slightly. Luca Devereaux, the man who controlled half of Chicago's underworld, was shaking. You're scared, she said. Terrified. Because if they know about the warehouses, they know about you. They know where you go, who you see, what your security looks like. The mole has access to everything. Then we figure out who it is and we stop them. We? You think I'm going to sit on the sidelines while someone tries to destroy you? That's exactly what I think. This is my mess to clean up. Wrong. We're married. Your messes are my messes now. Luca looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Alessia, this isn't a game. People are going to die before this is over. A lot of people. I know. And you still want to be involved? I don't want to, but I'm not going to hide while you deal with this alone. Something shifted in his expression. Resignation, maybe. Or recognition that arguing with her wasn't going to work. Fine. But you follow my lead. You do exactly what I say. No improvising, no taking risks. Agreed? Agreed. He pulled her into a tight embrace, his face buried in her hair. I can't lose you. Not now. Not when I finally have you. You won't lose me. You can't promise that. Watch me. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other while Chicago sprawled out below them, beautiful and dangerous and completely indifferent to their struggles. The next 72 hours were a blur of tension and paranoia. Luca barely slept, spending most of his time on the phone or in meetings with his inner circle. Alessia watched him work, saw how he operated under pressure. Calm, focused, absolutely merciless when it came to finding the traitor. They narrowed it down to three possibilities. Each one had access to the information that had been leaked. Each one had opportunity. Finding out which one was actually guilty required strategy. We set a trap, Luca explained during a late-night strategy session. His desk was covered with files, photographs, notes scrawled in his precise handwriting. Feed each of them different information. See which version reaches the Calabrese family. That's smart. It's basic, but it should work. Alessia studied the photographs. 3 men she'd never met, all of whom had worked for Luca for years. One of them had betrayed him, had gotten 4 people killed, would probably try to get more people killed if given the chance. "What happens when you find out who it is?" she asked. Luca's jaw tightened. "Nothing you need to worry about." "Luca." He looked up at her, and she saw the answer in his eyes. Whoever the traitor was, they were already dead. They just didn't know it yet. "I need you to trust me," he said quietly. "Can you do that?" It was a test. Alessia understood that. He was asking if she could really accept this part of him, the part that made hard decisions, that ended lives when necessary, that operated in shades of gray most people would call black. "Yes," she said, "I trust you." Relief flickered across his face. "Thank you." The trap was set on a Tuesday. Each of the 3 suspects received different information about an upcoming shipment, different times, different locations, different products. Then they waited. The Calabrese family made their move Thursday night, hitting one of the fake shipments. It was the information that had been given to a man named David Chen, Luca's logistics coordinator for the past 8 years. Luca's face when he found out was terrible to see. Not angry, exactly. Worse than that. Disappointed. Betrayed. "I trusted him," he said quietly, staring at Chen's file. "Promoted him. Brought him into the inner circle. And he sold me out for what? Money? Power? What was worth killing 4 people? What are you going to do?" "Handle it." He left the penthouse at midnight, taking 6 men with him. Alessia stood at the window, watching the city lights, trying not to think about what "handle it" meant in specific terms. Luca came back around 3 in the morning. He went straight to the shower, staying in there for almost 30 minutes. When he finally came to bed, his skin was still damp, his eyes haunted. Alessia didn't ask questions, just pulled him close, let him hold her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to humanity. "It's done," he said into her hair. "Chen won't be a problem anymore." "Okay. The Calabrese family knows we know. I sent them a message. They won't try anything for a while." "Good." His arms tightened around her. "I need you to know what I did tonight. I don't need the details." "Are you sure? Because once we cross this line, once you accept what I'm capable of, I already know what you're capable of. And I'm still here." Luca pulled back enough to see her face in the darkness. "Why?" "Because you're mine, and I protect what's mine." He kissed her then, desperate and needy, like he was drowning and she was air. They made love slowly, carefully, both of them needing the connection more than the physical release. Afterward, lying tangled together, Luca said, "I thought I could keep you separate from this part of my life. Keep you clean." "I was never going to stay clean. Not in this world. I wanted to try anyway." "I know, but we're past that now." "Yeah, we are." He fell asleep first, exhausted from the past few days. Alicia stayed awake, watching him sleep, thinking about how much had changed since their wedding day. She'd gone from a pawn in someone else's game to a player making her own moves, from a trophy wife hiding in a gilded cage to a partner standing beside her husband in the darkness. It should have scared her more than it did. Instead, she felt something almost like peace. The Chen situation should have brought them peace, should have closed the chapter on betrayal and let them move forward. Instead, it opened a door Alessia hadn't known existed. 3 days after Chen disappeared, Luca started bringing her to meetings. Not all of them, not the ones that involved explicit criminal activity or violence, but the business meetings, the negotiations, the strategic planning sessions. Suddenly, Alicia had a seat at the table. "You wanted to be involved," Luca said when she questioned it. "This is what involvement looks like." The first meeting was with a shipping company owner who owed Luca money. The man was sweating before they even sat down, his eyes darting between Luca and Alessia like he couldn't figure out why she was there. Mr. Chen, Luca said calmly, though the coincidence of the last name wasn't lost on anyone. You're 3 weeks behind on your payment. I know, Mr. Devereaux. I've had some cash flow problems. That's not my concern. We had an agreement. I just need another month. Maybe 2. Then I can... Luca leaned back in his chair, casual as anything. What do you think? He asked, turning to Alessia. She blinked. What do I think? Should we give Mr. Chen an extension? Every eye in the room was on her now. The shipping owner looked confused and hopeful. Marcus, standing by the door, kept his expression neutral. Luca's other 2 associates watched her with interest. This was a test. Alessia understood that immediately. Luca was seeing if she could handle this, if she understood the dynamics at play. She studied the shipping owner. Middle-aged, decent suit but not expensive. Wedding ring. The faint smell of cigarette smoke clinging to his clothes, stress smoking, probably recent. How much does he owe? She asked Luca. 75,000. She turned to the owner. You have a family, Mr. Chen? Yes. Wife and 2 kids. College age? My daughter just started at DePaul. Tuition. That's where the money went. Alessia could see it in the way his shoulders sagged when he mentioned his daughter. Give him 6 weeks, she said to Luca. Not 2 months, 6 weeks. That's enough time to restructure, but not enough to get comfortable. Luca's mouth twitched, almost a smile. And if he doesn't pay in 6 weeks? Then we revisit the conversation with different terms. The shipping owner looked like he might cry with relief. Thank you, Mrs. Devereaux. I won't forget this. After he left, Luca's associate, a man named Vincent, let out a low whistle. She's got good instincts, boss. I know, Luca said, still watching Alessia with that inscrutable expression. In the car on the way home, she finally asked, What was that about? What was what about? Putting me on the spot like that, testing me. I wasn't testing you. Luca, he sighed. Fine. I was testing you. I wanted to see how you'd handle it, whether you'd freeze up or make a decision. And? You did well, better than well. You read the situation, made a strategic call that was firm but not cruel. Vincent's right. You have good instincts. Alessia looked out the window at the passing city. I just figured he was desperate, not malicious. Desperate people will pay if you give them a path. Malicious people won't pay regardless. Exactly. So what now? I'm your business partner? Would you want to be? The question surprised her. I don't know. Maybe. It's not what I imagined doing with my life. What did you imagine? Teaching, helping people, making a difference in small, tangible ways. Luca was quiet for a moment. You could still do that, just in a different context. How? The families I work with, they have communities. People who depend on them for jobs, protection, stability. Someone needs to make sure those people aren't being exploited, that the businesses stay legitimate where they can, that the money gets invested back into the neighborhoods instead of just extracted. Alessia turned to look at him. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a purpose, if you want it. She thought about it. It wasn't teaching literacy or helping people get their GED, but it was still helping people, just in a messier, more complicated way. I want it, she said. Luca reached over, took her hand. Then it's yours. The transition wasn't smooth. Some of Luca's people resented having the boss's wife suddenly involved in operations. Others didn't take her seriously. A few made the mistake of being openly dismissive. Vincent pulled one guy aside after a particularly condescending comment during a meeting. Let me give you some advice, Vincent said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Mrs. Devereaux isn't just the boss's wife. She's got his ear, his trust, and increasingly, his authority. You disrespect her, you disrespect him. Think carefully about whether that's a fight you want. The message got through. Slowly, grudgingly, people started treating Alessia like she belonged there. She started small, reviewing accounts, asking questions, learning the structures and systems that kept Luca's empire running. She found inefficiencies, suggested improvements, started flagging businesses that were bleeding money or treating employees poorly. Luca listened to every suggestion, implemented most of them. You're good at this, he said one night, reviewing a proposal she'd written about restructuring their restaurant holdings. It's not that different from nonprofit work, honestly. just with higher stakes and more morally questionable funding sources. He laughed, actually laughed, when you put it that way. But success brought new problems. The more visible Alicia became in Luca's organization, the more she became a target. Not just for kidnapping attempts, but for people trying to manipulate her, use her, turn her against Luca. It came to a head during a negotiation with a real estate developer named Richard Breslin. He wanted to buy a property Luca owned in the Loop. The price was fair, the terms reasonable. Alicia saw no reason not to sell. "I don't trust him," Luca said when she brought it up. "Why not? Everything checks out. Breslin's connected to the Moretti family. If we sell to him, we're essentially giving the Morettis a foothold in territory we've controlled for years. He swears the purchase is personal, not business." They always do. Alessia studied the contract again, looking for red flags. What if we include restrictions? Limit what he can do with the property? He won't agree to that. Then we'll know you're right about his real motives. Luca considered it. Fine, draw up the restrictions. Let's see what he does. Breslin rejected the restricted terms immediately, exactly as Luca predicted. But instead of walking away, he went to Alessia directly, catching her after a meeting. "Mrs. Devereaux, do you have a minute?" Alessia glanced at Marcus, who'd moved closer automatically. "Make it quick." "The restrictions your husband wants, they're unreasonable. This is a legitimate purchase, not a power play." "Then you shouldn't have a problem with the restrictions." "They limit my ability to develop the property. I'd be taking a loss." "That's unfortunate. But the terms stand." Breslin's friendly expression slipped slightly. "I'm willing to sweeten the deal. An additional $200,000, but I need you to convince your husband to remove the restrictions." And there it was, the manipulation attempt. Breslin thought he could go through Alessia to get what he wanted, that she'd pressure Luca if the price was right. "The answer's no," she said flatly. "Mrs. Devereaux, please be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. You're the one trying to manipulate me into undermining my husband. We're done here." She walked away, Marcus falling into step beside her. Behind them, she heard Breslin curse under his breath. When she told Luca about it later, his face darkened. "He approached you directly?" "Tried to bribe me, basically. Offered extra money to convince you to change the terms." "That son of a—" Luca cut himself off. "I'm handling this." "How?" "Breslin's done. I'm blacklisting him. No one in the organization does business with him or anyone connected to him." "Isn't that extreme?" "He tried to use my wife against me." "That's not extreme, that's necessary." Alessia understood the logic, even if part of her thought it was overkill. In Luca's world, you couldn't show weakness. Couldn't let people think they could manipulate you through the people you loved. But it also meant every interaction she had carried weight. Every decision she made reflected on Luca. There was no room for mistakes. The pressure was starting to wear on her when everything exploded. It started with a phone call at 2 a.m. Luca's phone lit up the dark bedroom, vibrating insistently. He grabbed it, instantly alert. "What?" A pause. "When?" Another pause. "I'm on my way." He was out of bed before Alicia could fully wake up, pulling on clothes. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting up. "The warehouse on Ashland. Someone hit it. 3 men down. Product gone." "I thought we handled the mole situation." "We did. This is something else." He was gone in under 5 minutes, leaving Alessia alone in the dark bedroom with her racing thoughts. 3 men down. Did that mean injured? Dead? And who would be bold enough to hit one of Luca's warehouses after what happened to Chen? She tried to sleep but couldn't, finally gave up around 4 and went to make coffee. Marcus appeared in the kitchen like a ghost. "You should try to rest, Mrs. Devereaux." "Can't. What have you heard?" Marcus hesitated. "The 3 men are dead. Execution style. Whoever did this wanted to send a message." Alessia's hand shook as she poured coffee. "What kind of message?" "That they're not afraid of Mr. Devereaux. That they think they can challenge him." "Who would be stupid enough to do that?" "Someone with backing. Someone who thinks they have the power to win." Luca didn't come home until almost noon. He looked like he'd aged a decade overnight, exhausted, furious, and barely holding it together. "It was the Calabrese family," he said without preamble. "They used the Chen situation as cover to regroup. Now they're making their move." "I thought you sent them a message that they wouldn't try anything. Apparently I was wrong, or they think I'm weakened enough to take down." He paced the living room like a caged animal, dangerous energy radiating off him. "What are you going to do?" "Go to war, apparently. They've made it impossible not to." "Luca, don't. Don't try to talk me down or suggest diplomacy. They killed 3 of my people and took $500,000 in product. This isn't something we negotiate away." Alessia had never seen him like this. Control completely frayed, the careful mask shattered. This was Luca Devereaux, with nothing between him and his rage. "Okay," she said quietly, "then we go to war. What do you need from me?" He stopped pacing, looked at her. "Stay safe, that's all. Stay in the penthouse. Let Marcus protect you. Don't give them a target." "I can do more than hide." "Alessia, I mean it. You said I have good instincts. Put me to work. Let me help." Luca crossed to her, grabbed her shoulders. "If something happened to you because I let you get involved in this—" "Nothing's going to happen to me. We're doing this together, remember? All of it." He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Fear, maybe, or resignation. "Fine, but you follow my lead. No improvising." "Agreed." The war with the Calabrese family wasn't like the movies. There weren't dramatic shootouts in the street or car chases through downtown. It was quieter, more strategic, hitting each other's businesses, turning allies against each other, bleeding resources until someone broke. Alicia found herself in the command center of it all, Luca's office, which had become a war room filled with maps, files, and constant phone calls. She handled communications, coordinated logistics, managed the information flow. She was good at it, better than she expected. "The shipment to Detroit needs to be rerouted," she told Vincent during one session. "The Calabrese family has contacts at the border checkpoint. They'll seize it." "How do you know that?" "I've been tracking their movements. They've hit 3 shipments in the past week, all at that checkpoint. The pattern's obvious." Vincent looked at Luca. "She's right. We should reroute." "Do it," Luca said. They saved the shipment, avoided losing another $1 million in product. Small victories, but they added up. The Calabrese family adapted, started hitting softer targets, restaurants, legitimate businesses, places where Luca couldn't retaliate without collateral damage. "They're trying to draw you out," Alicia said, studying the pattern of attacks. "Make you do something reckless." "I know. So we don't take the bait." "Easier said than done. Every day I don't retaliate, I look weak." "You look strategic. There's a difference." Luca rubbed his face, exhausted. They'd been at this for 2 weeks straight. Neither of them was sleeping enough. "What would you do?" he asked. "Go after their money. Not their people or their property. Their actual financial assets, the stuff they can't easily replace." "That's a long game. Could take months. Better than a bloodbath in the street." He considered it. "We'd need inside information, access to their accounts. So we find someone who has that access." It took 3 days, but they found their opening. A banker named Michael Torres who handled accounts for several of the Calabrese family's shell companies. He was clean, well-paid, loyal. He was also having an affair with his secretary, and his wife didn't know. "We leverage that," Alicia said. "Tell him we'll expose the affair unless he cooperates." Luca looked at her. "You're suggesting blackmail." "I'm suggesting we use available resources." "Is it any worse than what they're doing to us?" "No, but I didn't think you'd be the one suggesting it." "Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises." Torres cooperated, gave them access to account information that revealed the structure of the Calabrese family's finances, where the money came from, where it went, which accounts were vulnerable. Luca used the information to freeze assets, redirect payments, create chaos in their financial infrastructure. It was bloodless warfare, but effective. The Calabrese family retaliated by targeting Alicia directly. She was leaving a meeting at one of Luca's restaurants when it happened. Marcus was with her, plus 2 other security guys. They made it to the car without incident. Then the shooting started. Alessia hit the ground before her brain fully processed what was happening. Marcus was on top of her, shielding her with his body. Glass shattered. Someone was screaming. The world compressed into noise and terror, and the weight of Marcus pressing her into the pavement. It lasted maybe 30 seconds. Felt like hours. When it stopped, Marcus hauled her up and into the car. One of the other security guys was bleeding from his shoulder. The car's back window was completely gone. "Drive," Marcus barked at the driver. "Now!" They made it back to the penthouse in record time. Alessia's ears were ringing, her hands shaking so badly she could barely get her seatbelt off. Luca met them in the lobby, his face white. He pulled Alessia out of the car, hands running over her, checking for injuries. "I'm fine," she said. "Marcus did his job. Are you sure you're not hurt?" "I'm sure." Luca pulled her against his chest, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. She felt him shaking. "This is my fault," he said into her hair. "I should never have let you get involved. Should have kept you separate from all of this." "Luca, they could have killed you, right there in the street. And it would have been because I was too selfish to protect you properly." Alessia pulled back enough to see his face. "Stop it. This isn't your fault. And I chose to be involved. You didn't force me." "I should have said no. Then I would have done it anyway. You know I would have." He cupped her face in his hands, and she saw the fear in his eyes. Raw, unfiltered terror. "I can't lose you," he said. "Do you understand that? Losing you would destroy me. Then we make sure that doesn't happen. We end this. Together." "How?" Alessia thought about everything they'd learned, all the information they'd gathered. An idea was forming, dangerous and possibly stupid, but it might work. "We go after Antonio Calabrese directly," she said. Luca stared at her. "The head of the family?" "Yes. We've been fighting his lieutenants, his operations, but the real power is Antonio. If we can neutralize him, the rest falls apart." "Neutralize how?" "I don't know yet, but there has to be a way." They spent the next 2 days planning. Antonio Calabrese was 73 years old, a widower with 4 adult children who all worked in the family business. He was notoriously paranoid, rarely left his compound, trusted almost no one. But everyone had vulnerabilities, they just needed to find his. It came from an unexpected source, Alessia's father. Dominic called on a Thursday evening, asking to meet. Luca was suspicious, but Alessia convinced him to agree. They met at a neutral location, a restaurant where both families had people watching. "I heard about the attack on my daughter," Dominic said without preamble. "The Calabrese family has crossed a line." "I'm handling it," Luca said. "Are you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, this war is bleeding both sides dry with no end in sight." "What's your point, Dominic?" Alessia's father leaned forward. "My point is that I have information you need about Antonio Calabrese, something that could end this." "Why would you help us?" Alessia asked. Dominic looked at his daughter. "Because you're family, and because Antonio Calabrese tried to kill you. That makes this personal." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and what looked like medical records. "Antonio has lung cancer," Dominic explained. "Stage 4. He's been keeping it quiet, but he's dying. 6 months, maybe less. His children know, which is why they're scrambling for power. They think whoever proves themselves strongest before Antonio dies will inherit control of the family." Luca studied the documents. "How did you get this?" "I have my sources. The question is, what are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to end this war, tonight." They moved fast. Luca called a meeting with the Calabrese family under the pretense of negotiating peace. Antonio agreed, probably figuring he had nothing to lose. They met at a warehouse on neutral ground. Antonio brought 6 people. Luca brought Vincent, Marcus, and Alessia. "You brought your wife to a peace negotiation?" Antonio said, wheezing slightly. His illness was visible up close. The gray pallor, the labored breathing. "My wife is my partner," Luca said. "She stays." Antonio's children stood behind him, watching everything with calculating eyes. The oldest son, Marco, looked especially predatory. "You wanted to talk peace," Antonio said. "So talk." Luca leaned back in his chair, completely calm. "Here's what's going to happen. This war ends tonight. You pull back all operations targeting me and mine. In exchange, I don't reveal that you're dying of cancer, and your children are already circling like vultures." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "That's a lie," Marco said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It's not. I have medical records, witness statements, everything I need to prove it. If that information gets out, every family you've got alliances with will know you're weak. They'll start making moves on your territory before you're even in the ground. Antonio's face had gone even paler. You wouldn't. Try me. Keep coming after my people, my businesses, my wife, and I'll burn your legacy to the ground before the cancer gets a chance to. Silence. Alessia watched Antonio's children process the threat, saw the calculations happening behind their eyes. Or, Luca continued, you agree to peace, we stop bleeding each other dry. You spend your remaining time securing your succession without interference from me. When you die, we maintain the peace with whoever takes over. Everyone wins. Except you get to keep your territory, Marco said. I keep what's mine. You keep what's yours. That's how peace works. Antonio coughed, a wet, rattling sound. And if I refuse? Then we keep fighting until one of us is destroyed. But you'll be dead in 6 months anyway, and your children will inherit a war they're not equipped to win. Your choice. It wasn't really a choice. They all knew it. Antonio looked at his children, seemed to have an entire conversation in that glance, then back at Luca. Fine, peace. But if you cross me, you'll already be dead, Luca said bluntly. So the threat's meaningless. But I give you my word, as long as your family honors this peace, I will too. They shook on it. Antonio's grip was weak, his hand trembling slightly. On the way out, Marco caught Alessia's arm. This was your idea, wasn't it? Does it matter? You're not what I expected. The scared little trophy wife. I was never that. You just assumed I was. Marco smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We'll remember that. When my father's gone and I'm running things. Good. Then you'll remember what happens when you come after me and mine. She pulled her arm free and walked away, feeling his eyes on her back. In the car, Luca took her hand. You were incredible in there. I was terrified. Couldn't tell. You looked like you were born to this. Maybe I was. I just didn't know it until now. The war ended, just like that. No dramatic finale, no bloodbath. Just two families agreeing that mutual destruction served no one's interests. Luca's people were relieved. Some seemed almost disappointed there wasn't more violence. But most just wanted to get back to business as usual. Alessia found herself exhausted in ways she hadn't anticipated. The adrenaline that had kept her going through the war drained away, leaving her hollowed out. Is it always like this? She asked Luca one night, lying in bed unable to sleep. Like what? This feeling, like you've crossed a line you can never uncross. Luca was quiet for a moment. Yeah, it's always like that. The first time you make a call that gets someone hurt or killed, even indirectly, it changes you. You can't go back to who you were before. Do you ever regret it? Every day. But I do it anyway because the alternative is worse. Alessia rolled over to face him. I don't regret it. I thought I would, but I don't. That probably makes me a terrible person. It makes you someone who can survive in this world. There's a difference. Is there? I'd like to think so. They fell asleep holding each other. Two people who'd crossed lines together and would keep crossing them as long as they had each other. The peace held for 3 months before the next crisis hit, though this time it came from an unexpected direction. Alessia missed her period in early December, then missed the next one. By the time January rolled around, she couldn't ignore the nausea that hit every morning, or the way certain smells made her stomach turn. She took the test alone in the bathroom, hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. When the 2 pink lines appeared, she sat down on the floor and just stared at it. Pregnant. She was pregnant. In the middle of a life that involved blackmail, territory wars, and casual discussions about eliminating threats, she was bringing a child into this world. The realization hit her in waves. Terror, joy, more terror, something that might have been excitement buried under all the fear. She told Luca that night over dinner, just blurted it out between the pasta course and dessert. I'm pregnant. Luca's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down carefully, like it might explode if he moved too fast. You're sure? 3 tests sure. All positive. He sat back in his chair, his face doing something complicated, processing, calculating, feeling things he didn't know how to express. Okay, he said finally. Okay? That's all you've got? I'm... He stopped, started over. How do you feel about it? Terrified? Happy? More terrified? I don't know. How do you feel about it? Luca stood up, crossed to where she sat, and pulled her into his arms. Terrified, he admitted, and happy, and completely unprepared. That makes two of us. They stood like that for a while, holding each other in the dining room while Chicago glittered outside the windows, both of them trying to wrap their heads around the fact that in approximately 7 months, there would be 3 of them instead of 2. We're going to have to make changes, Luca said eventually. Security, living arrangements, everything. A baby makes us more vulnerable. I know. People will try to use this against us. I know that too. He pulled back to look at her face. Are you sure you want this? We have options. No judgment either way. Alessia had thought about it during the hours between taking the test and telling him. Thought about how much easier life would be without a child. How much safer. I want this, she said. Even though it's terrible timing and probably irresponsible and definitely complicated. I want this. Relief washed over Luca's face. Good. Me too. The pregnancy changed things in ways Alessia hadn't anticipated. Luca became even more protective, if that was possible. He doubled security again, vetted every person who came near her, started planning for scenarios she hadn't even considered. What if someone tries to grab you while you're pregnant? He asked one morning while she was dealing with morning sickness. Then Marcus shoots them. Same as always. What if they use the baby as leverage after it's born? Then we make sure they can't get close enough to try. What if... Luca, stop. You're spiraling. He was pacing the bedroom, running through worst-case scenarios like they were chess moves. I'm trying to prepare for every possibility. You can't prepare for everything. At some point, you have to trust that we're strong enough to handle whatever comes. That's not how I work. I know, but maybe you should try it anyway. He stopped pacing, looked at her sitting on the bathroom floor in his old t-shirt, looking exhausted and nauseous, and somehow still beautiful to him. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Be a father. Raise a kid in this life. Keep them safe. Nobody knows how to do it. We just figure it out as we go. That's a terrible plan. It's the only plan we've got. Luca sat down on the floor next to her. What if I'm bad at it? What if I screw them up? Then we'll be screwed up together, as a family. He took her hand, laced their fingers together. When did you become the optimistic one? About 5 minutes after I stopped throwing up. He laughed despite himself. Fair enough. The news spread through the organization quickly. Alessia wasn't sure who leaked it. Probably someone who overheard one of Luca's security briefings. But within a week, everyone knew. The reactions were mixed. Some of Luca's people seemed genuinely happy for them. Others looked worried, probably calculating how a baby would affect operations. A few seemed to view it as weakness, a vulnerability that could be exploited. Vincent was the first to congratulate them directly. Boss, Mrs. Devereaux, heard the news. That's great. Thanks, Vincent, Alessia said. You need anything, extra security, different assignments, whatever. You let me know. I will. After he left, Luca turned to her. He's already thinking strategically, how to use this to our advantage. And that's bad? It's smart, but it also means everyone else is thinking the same thing, including our enemies. He wasn't wrong. The first threat came 2 weeks later, a message delivered to one of Luca's restaurants, written on plain paper with no signature. Congratulations on the baby. Hope nothing happens to it. Luca's reaction was immediate and volcanic. He had every camera in a 5-block radius pulled, every person who'd been in that restaurant identified and vetted, put a price on information about who sent the message. They found the courier in under 24 hours. He was 19 years old, worked at a bike messenger service, and crumbled the second Luca's people picked him up. Some guy paid me $100 to deliver an envelope. That's all I know, I swear. Describe him. The description matched one of Marco Calabrese's lieutenants. The piece wasn't holding as well as they'd hoped. Luca made a phone call, had a conversation that Alessia only heard one side of, but it was enough. You gave your word. I don't care what your father would have done. This ends now or we're back to war, and this time I won't be diplomatic about it. Good. Keep it that way. He hung up, jaw tight with fury. Marco? Alessia asked. Testing boundaries, seeing how far he can push before I push back. What did you tell him? That if anyone connected to his family comes near you or our child, I'll dismantle everything his father built, piece by piece, and I'll make sure he watches. Think that'll work? Better work. I'm not bluffing. The threats stopped after that, at least the overt ones. But Alicia knew they were still out there, still calculating, still looking for opportunities. The pregnancy progressed. Morning sickness gave way to exhaustion, which eventually gave way to something resembling normalcy. Alessia started showing around month 4, her body changing in ways that felt both miraculous and invasive. Luca was fascinated by it, would put his hand on her stomach at night, feeling for movement. When the baby finally kicked for the first time, his face did something Alessia had never seen before, pure, unguarded joy. Did you feel that? He asked, his hand pressed to where the kick had been. Kind of hard to miss from my end. That's our kid in there, actually moving around. Yeah, it is. He kissed her stomach, gentle and reverent. Hey kid, your mom and I are completely unprepared for you, but we're going to try our best anyway. Alessia ran her fingers through his hair, feeling something in her chest expand. This man who could order executions without blinking was talking to her stomach like it was the most important conversation he'd ever had. They found out the gender at 20 weeks. A girl. Luca looked at the ultrasound screen, his hand gripping Alessia's so tight it almost hurt. A daughter, he said quietly. You disappointed? No, terrified. I have no idea how to raise a daughter. You'll figure it out. What if she hates me? What if she finds out what I do and wants nothing to do with me? The doctor stepped out to give them privacy. Alicia sat up on the exam table, still holding Luca's hand. Then we'll deal with it. But I think you're getting ahead of yourself. She's not even born yet. I know, but I can't help thinking about it. What we're bringing her into, the life she'll have to live because of who we are. She'll also have parents who love her, who'll do anything to protect her. That's more than a lot of kids get. Luca pulled her into a hug, careful of her stomach. How are you always so calm about this? I'm not. I'm just better at hiding the panic. They started preparing the penthouse for a baby. Converted one of the guest rooms into a nursery. Alessia spent hours researching cribs and car seats and all the things they'd need. Luca hired a security consultant to baby-proof the entire place, which was apparently more complicated than regular baby-proofing. The windows need reinforced locks, the consultant explained. The balcony should be completely off limits until she's older. You'll want cameras in the nursery, motion sensors, panic buttons. She's going to grow up in a fortress, Alessia said, after the consultant left. She's going to grow up safe, Luca corrected. Is there a difference? In our world? No. The reality of that settled over them. Their daughter would never have a normal childhood, would always have security following her, always have to be careful about who she trusted, always live with the knowledge that her father's enemies might try to use her as leverage. We should give her a normal name, Alicia said one night. Nothing that screams mob family. What did you have in mind? I don't know, something classic. Emma? Sophie? Elena, Luca said. After my grandmother, she was tough as hell, survived things that would have broken most people. Elena Devereaux. Alessia tried it out. I like it. Yeah? Yeah? He put his hand on her stomach again. Hey, Elena. That's you. Hope you're ready for this mess. The baby, Elena, kicked in response. Luca grinned. She's feisty already. We're in trouble. So much trouble. But alongside the joy and preparation, threats kept emerging. Nothing as direct as the first message, but enough to keep Luca on edge. A suspicious car following Marcus. Someone asking too many questions about Alessia's schedule. Small things that individually meant nothing but together painted a picture of people watching, waiting. Luca increased security to levels that bordered on paranoid. Alessia had 6 bodyguards now, rotating shifts. Couldn't go anywhere without advance notice. The penthouse felt less like a home and more like a bunker. This is insane, she said, after being told she couldn't go to her sister's high school graduation without 3 days' notice for security planning. This is necessary, Luca countered. Luca, I'm 7 months pregnant. I'm not exactly a flight risk. You're 7 months pregnant with my child. That makes you the most valuable target in Chicago. I can't live like this, neither can she. You can and you will, until she's born and the situation stabilizes. They fought about it. Actually fought, raised voices and everything. The first real argument they'd had in months. You're being controlling, Alicia said. I'm being careful. There's a difference. No, you're being paranoid. You're seeing threats everywhere. Because threats are everywhere. You think I'm overreacting? 3 weeks ago, someone tried to hack our security system. 2 weeks ago, one of the guards we hired turned out to have connections to the Moretti family. Last week, I get it, but you can't protect us from everything. Watch me. Alessia threw her hands up. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You think you can control every variable, plan for every scenario, but you can't. Life doesn't work that way. My life works that way. It has to. Well, maybe your life needs to change. The words hung between them, sharp and challenging. Luca's face went hard. My life is what keeps you safe, keeps our daughter safe. You want me to change that? I want you to trust that we're strong enough to handle some uncertainty, that we don't need to live in a cage to be safe. We're not in a cage, aren't we? Luca opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to realize he couldn't, because she was right. The penthouse had become a cage. Beautiful, luxurious, but a cage nonetheless. He sat down heavily on the couch. I don't know how to do this any other way. Alessia sat next to him, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. Then maybe we figure out a new way. Together. What if someone gets hurt because I wasn't careful enough? What if we spend our entire lives being so careful that we forget to actually live? He looked at her, and she saw the fear in his eyes. Not fear of his enemies or business rivals. Fear of failing her, failing their daughter. I can't lose you, he said quietly. Either of you. I wouldn't survive it. You're not going to lose us, but you need to let us breathe. They compromised. Security stayed tight, but Alessia got more freedom of movement. She could go to Sophia's graduation with notice, could have lunch with her mother without 3 days of planning, could occasionally leave the penthouse without feeling like she was planning a military operation. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. The real test came when Antonio Calabrese died. It happened in late February, 2 months before Alessia's due date. The old man finally succumbed to his cancer, leaving a power vacuum in the Calabrese family. Marco took control immediately, but not without opposition. 2 of his brothers challenged his authority. The family fractured into competing factions, each one making plays for territory and influence. This could get messy, Vincent warned during an emergency meeting. Marco's aggressive. If he thinks he needs to prove himself, he'll come after us, Luca finished. I know. What's the play? Luca looked at Alessia, who'd insisted on being part of the meeting despite being heavily pregnant and uncomfortable. We stay neutral, she said. Let them fight it out among themselves. That's risky, Vincent said. If Marco wins, and we didn't support him, if we support him and he loses, we're worse off, Alessia countered. Better to stay out of it entirely. Let them resolve their succession crisis without our interference. She's right, Luca said. We maintain the peace agreement with whoever ends up in charge, but we don't take sides. It was the smart play, but it required discipline. Marco reached out multiple times, looking for support. Luca turned him down every time. I respected your father, Luca told him during one particularly tense phone call. But this is your family's problem to solve. I'm staying out of it. That's a mistake, Marco said. When I win, and I will win, I'll remember who helped me and who didn't. Then I guess you'll remember I kept my word and stayed neutral. Same as I expect you to do regarding my family. Marco hung up without another word. He's going to be a problem, Alicia said. Probably, but that's future us's problem. Right now we focus on keeping our heads down and getting through the next 2 months. Elena had other plans. Alessia's water broke 3 weeks early at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. She woke up to wetness and immediate panic. Luca, wake up. He was alert instantly, sitting up. What's wrong? My water broke. The baby's coming. Everything after that was controlled chaos. Marcus appeared within seconds. Had he been standing outside their door? Luca was on the phone with the hospital, getting their private suite prepared. Alessia tried to remember all the breathing exercises she'd learned and found her mind completely blank with panic. The drive to the hospital took 10 minutes that felt like hours. Luca held her hand the entire time, his face pale but determined. "You're okay," he kept saying. "You're both going to be okay." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. You're the strongest person I know. You've got this." Labor was nothing like Alessia expected. It was longer, more painful, more exhausting. Luca stayed with her through all of it, letting her crush his hand, talking her through contractions, being the steady presence she needed. 17 hours after her water broke, Elena Marie Devereaux came into the world screaming her lungs out. The nurse placed her on Alessia's chest, this tiny, perfect, furious human being, and Alessia felt something fundamental shift in her universe. This was her daughter, her and Luca's daughter. "She's perfect," Luca said, his voice thick with emotion. "Look at her. She's perfect." Elena had dark hair like both of them, tiny fingers that wrapped around Luca's thumb with surprising strength, and lungs that could wake the dead. "She's loud," Alessia said, exhausted but grinning. "Gets that from you." "Definitely gets that from you." They spent the next hour just staring at her, taking in every detail. Luca looked transformed, softer somehow, more human, like becoming a father had stripped away some of the armor he wore. "I'm terrified," he admitted, holding Elena carefully like she might break. "I have no idea what I'm doing." "Join the club. We'll figure it out." Security filled the hallway outside the private suite. Marcus had personally vetted every doctor and nurse who came near them. It was excessive and necessary, and exactly what Alessia had expected. Her family visited the next day. Carmela cried. Dominic looked at his granddaughter with surprising gentleness. Sophia held Elena like she was made of glass and declared herself the favorite aunt. "She looks like you," Carmela said to Alessia. "Same nose." "She has Luca's eyebrows." "She's perfect either way." They took Elena home 3 days later to a penthouse that had been security swept 6 times and baby-proofed to the point of absurdity. The nursery was ready, painted a soft gray with white furniture and everything they could possibly need. That first night home was terrifying. Elena cried every 2 hours. Alessia was exhausted. Luca was exhausted. Neither of them had any idea what they were doing. "Is she supposed to cry this much?" Luca asked at 3 in the morning, holding Elena while Alessia tried to get some sleep. "I think so. The book said newborns cry a lot." "The books didn't mention it would be this loud." "She's got powerful lungs. That's good, right?" "If you say so," but they figured it out. Slowly, painfully, with a lot of mistakes and very little sleep. Alessia learned to feed her. Luca learned to change diapers, something he'd initially claimed he couldn't do until Alessia pointed out he ran a criminal empire and could definitely handle a diaper. The first time Elena smiled at them, really smiled, not just gas, Luca actually teared up. "She knows us," he said, sounding awed. "She recognized me." "Of course she knows you. You're her dad." "Her dad?" He said it like he was testing out the word, seeing how it fit. "I'm someone's dad." "You're doing great at it." "I held a negotiation today while she was sleeping in my office. Vincent said it was unprofessional." "What did you tell him?" "That she's the boss's daughter and she can sleep wherever she wants." Alessia laughed despite her exhaustion. "We're really doing this, actually raising a kid in this life." "Yeah, we are." The threats came, as expected. Not immediately, but within the first month. People testing boundaries, seeing if a new baby made Luca weak or vulnerable. They learned quickly that it didn't make him weak. It made him more dangerous. Someone made the mistake of mentioning Elena in a threatening context during a business meeting. Luca's response was immediate and brutal. The man was out of the city by nightfall, and word spread that the boss's daughter was completely off limits. Marco Calabrese tried once, sent a gift to the penthouse that security intercepted. It was innocent enough, a stuffed animal. But the message was clear: "I can reach your daughter." Luca's response was to have Marco's favorite nightclub shut down for code violations, then his restaurant, then his legitimate businesses, one by one, until Marco called begging for peace. "Touch my family again and there won't be anything left to inherit from your father," Luca told him. "Are we clear?" They were clear. Life settled into a new normal. Alessia and Luca learned to function on minimal sleep. Elena grew from a screaming potato into a baby with personality. stubborn, loud, and absolutely fearless. When she started crawling, the security team had to adjust their protocols to account for a mobile target. She just tried to crawl toward the balcony, Marcus reported one afternoon. I redirected her. Great. My daughter is already an escape artist, Alicia said. Takes after her mother. 6 months after Elena was born, Alessia and Luca stood on the balcony one evening after putting her to bed. The city spread out below them, alive with lights and movement. Remember when we got married? Alessia said. How much we hated each other. I never hated you. You called me a pawn. And immediately regretted it. Does that count? She leaned against him, his arm around her waist. Look at us now. Married, parents, running a criminal empire together. Not exactly what either of us planned. No, but I wouldn't change it. Luca turned her to face him. Even knowing what you know now, what this life costs? Even then, because I have you and Elena and something worth fighting for. You could have had a normal life, a safe life. Safe is overrated, and normal is boring. He kissed her, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that still made her heart race even after everything they'd been through. I love you, he said when they broke apart. I don't say it enough, but I do. I know. I love you too. Even though I'm controlling and paranoid and terrible at expressing emotions, especially because of that. They went back inside to the penthouse that had transformed from a cage into a home. Elena was sleeping peacefully in her nursery, surrounded by security measures and love in equal proportion. Alessia checked on her before going to bed, watching her daughter sleep. This tiny human who'd come into the world 3 weeks early and immediately taken over their entire lives. Luca appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. She's going to be trouble, he said quietly. Definitely. She's our kid. Think we can handle it? I think we don't have a choice. That's not reassuring. It's honest. They stood there watching their daughter sleep, two people who'd started as strangers in an arranged marriage and become something neither of them had expected. Partners. Lovers. Parents. The life they'd built wasn't perfect. It was messy and dangerous and morally complicated. But it was theirs. They'd chosen it, fought for it, nearly died for it. And they'd do it all again in a heartbeat, because this imperfect, chaotic, beautiful life was worth every risk. Elena stirred in her sleep, making the small noises that meant she'd wake up soon wanting food. Alessia moved to get her, but Luca stopped her. I've got it. You get some rest. You sure? Yeah. You've been up with her the last 3 nights. He picked up Elena carefully, started the familiar routine of nighttime feeding. Alessia watched him for a moment, this man who could be ruthless and cold with his enemies, but was impossibly gentle with their daughter. She went to bed, but stayed awake long enough to hear Luca talking to Elena in the nursery, telling her about her grandfather, about the empire she'd inherit someday, about how she was going to change the world just by existing in it. Alessia smiled and finally let herself fall asleep, secure in the knowledge that whatever came next, they'd face it together. The marriage that had started with lies and resentment had become something real, something worth protecting, something that couldn't be broken by outside forces because they'd built it strong enough to withstand anything. They'd conquered their world, not by escaping it or transcending it, but by claiming their place in it, together, as equals, as partners, as a family that no one could destroy. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered.